Welcome to the quarantined Rewatchers on the pod. We're so excited to be here, and I feel like the mood's a little down. So we're just excited. I'm excited. We're gonna
so excited. I couldn't be more excited.
I picked a banger of a movie this week that is, just happiness. It's really a delight. It's going to bring the mood up. But this week we watched Mother, 2009 or 10, depending what country you're in, a movie by Oscar winner Bong Joon-ho. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But let's see who's here for the crew today. It's a little short because of the plague. I'm Mitchell Marshall here along with
Tyler Harris,
Tyler McKinley.
Justin Hammer. We did it.
No one spoke over each other, but we did leave a beautiful, beautiful pregnant pause. So we decided in these weird times, we've been meeting for a while to pick some movies ourselves because we've had some guests on who have picked movies, and that's been a lot of fun. But of course, the more we go along, the more the few of us who are here every week have a lot of ideas of things we want to watch with our friends. So I chose Mother just because I fell in love with Parasite, and I've wanted to watch another Korean movie by Bong Joon-ho. The only other movie I've seen of his is the one with the train, and it's in English, and I'm just really failing here.
Snowpiercer.
310 to Yuma.
I know it's Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3.
Unstoppable. Can we just keep naming train movies?
Is there a speed movie with the train in it?
I was about to ask that, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we don't know.
There should be.
Speed 3, Off the Rails.
Oh, Back to the Future 3. There's a train in that one, I think.
That was, largely
really
a train movie. I don't know. I'd put it in that category. It's the most memorable part of that movie, easily.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Back to the Future 3. It's much better than 2, and I get in a lot of trouble for that take, but I stand by it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. My canon is there's nothing after 1.
Really?
2 and 3 is just like, it's the most lazy filmmaking. It's like, let's remake the same shit just in a different setting. Like, get the fuck out.
Hey, but that old age makeup on Biff.
The only thing that makes
tasty.
The only thing that makes 2 worth it is that we get to see Flea. Where is he wearing 2 ties? I think. Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Now, I will say, did Back to the Future feel more important when Donald Trump got elected? That it was like all of a sudden we had arrived. We were finally living in the future that everyone had wanted to for so long because of Back to the Future 2.
Between that and the Cubs, I mean.
Yeah. So what we need is them to make another one so we know what's going to happen in another 20 years. Maybe that's why they haven't. Maybe there isn't anything 20 years from now, and that's why we don't have a Back to the Future movie.
Shit.
I mean, I saw a picture recently with Doc and Marty together.
I know there's been talk of it, and I really don't want it to happen. They've been saying Tom Holland would do it, and I'm like, Tom, you're great, but no, we don't need any more of it. The hoverboards never came to be, so screw you. Anyway, let's talk about Mother.
Directed by Bong Joon-ho, a curiously huge fan of Back to the Future, which is why we spent this amount of time on it.
Yeah, it's honestly the 7th line in his Wikipedia is loves Back to the Future.
Yeah, just Google Bong Joon-ho Back to the Future cosplay. It's very enlightening.
Tyler, you did not write a summary, but do you want to give us a quick summation of what would you say the events of this film are?
Sure. Jeez. Man, I'm going to do this without looking at anything. There's this guy who isn't super smart and gets very drunk and maybe kills someone, maybe doesn't, and goes to jail for it. And his mom is like, he didn't do it. And so she becomes Nancy Drew, and she finds out all this stuff. And then she finds this guy from her son's phone that was possibly there on the night, and he was like, nope, he did it. And in fact, I'm going to call the police and tell him that he for sure did it. And she's like, fuck you, and kills him. And then she gets on a bus and acupunctures herself into artificial bliss, supposedly. That's my read on it. I don't know. That's all I've got.
I did have to look up some extra summary just to make sure I knew what I was following. But yeah, is acupuncture that powerful? I've been looking into some hypnosis recently, and I'm wondering if I should just go the acupuncture route. You can really get yourself going.
I mean, acupuncture, I think, paired with psychedelics is the way that you need to go. Really, acupuncture paired with anything mind-altering does let your mind be altered.
I'm a little like not. I give plasma, but I did, but I'm not really here for the needles. But I might try it. But Tyler, you brought up
Needles is the album of Kurt Cobain's third album, if it ever were to have happened.
Oh,
God damn you!
Oh,
man.
Not on Kurt Cobain's birthday, Tyler, of all days.
Fuck. Every year.
Kurt Cobain also loves Back to the Future.
And Bong Joon-ho's mother.
So let's.
But it was before the movie came out, so it was just actually his mom. This is a nightmare. I'm sorry. I'm done. I'm sorry.
So let's talk about Korean older Nancy Drew, because I think that's what inspired this, almost for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
So the character's name, by the way, I don't think we ever learned the mother's name. I think she really is just Mother. Very fitting. This is really well thought of when a lot of filmmakers who I follow online, and when there was all the excitement around Parasite, they said this is this and The Host are the Bong Joon-ho movies to kind of go back to for reference and appreciate his work pre-Parasite. And Parasite is such a pretty and clean movie, and this is in a good way. The cinematography is very different, but it's so much dirtier. And it's a fun to watch. I see why it's got a high critical score. It did get a little boring at points, if I'm being honest, but a couple of the Tarantino-esque twists in there were made it a lot of fun. The other thing I would say is you don't really want to root for anyone. At first, you think he might not have done it, and you want a mother to get her son back. But then it turns out everyone is a pretty bad person. So I'm just wondering where you guys stood with the outcome you think the audience was supposed to want with a movie like this.
I thought it did a really good job because I, for one, hated everyone as soon as they were introduced, and they certain parts of the community were like, I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation of his name. Is it Dojun?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
There were certain members of the community who like actually loved him and were like thought he was so cool or so great, and others that actually hated him. And I didn't understand that at all. I'm like, he drove me insane, and everyone else did too. Like the weird relationship he has with his mom from the beginning, and everyone just is an asshole. It makes me uncomfortable. And then I found myself. It did a very good job of just before halfway through, I was kind of on board of kind of rooting for her to prove her son's innocence. And then there's kind of that big, much like in Parasite, there's sort of this big moment halfway through where something's revealed that just shifts the whole tone of the whole movie, where her son remembers when he was 5 and she tried to kill him. That up until that point I was rooting for them, and then I'm like, oh, now I'm back to everyone being a piece of shit, but I like that I think that this time.
Yeah. I guess I maybe don't hate everyone as much as has been expressed so far. I think that Mother as a character at the center of this is so fascinating, and to me, like, especially the mother and the son, I'll just call him that. That whole relationship to me felt like such a product of a bunch of external circumstances and trauma that had obviously occurred in their lives. And it's hard for me in those situations to see that and not just feel bad for everyone. So I found myself like, I was mostly just really bummed out at their lives that they had at that point because, everything with the mother. I mean, I think about that moment where it is revealed that she tried to kill her son. Like, trying to think of where you would have to be in your head to attempt something like that or think that that was going to fix things. Like it really is. I do think everyone in this is so incredibly flawed. But I think like the character of Mother and Do-jun in particular, they flesh out with this idea of like there being these circumstances outside of them and kind of this hand that they've been dealt that, I mean, how do you play that hand? You know what I mean? That's at least the impression that I got. But
well, and clearly poverty is a huge through line for Bong Joon. I mean, Parasite's all about class systems, and then Snowpiercer is that to an absolute extreme, whereas there's cannibalism among the poor. And so it's interesting to see this one. You do see the wealthy kind of in the beginning with the guys in the black Mercedes-Benz, who I really wanted the other dude to beat one of them with the club. And that just shows you how I'm feeling in this quarantine time.
You just want to see some more golf.
Yes.
Of any kind.
I know. I just miss my golf. And I really thought if we'd be quarantined this long without golf, I would at least be able to hit zombies. And it's Hollywood lied to us. But yeah, that's just an interesting through line that you think like she might have some mental illness. Clearly there's some poverty. They do infer that she's a widow. So they are in this really desperate way. And so I also wonder too, if things she did to him led to him being so cognitively disabled. I thought it was a mental illness, and it still may be, but it seems like he's endured trauma and abuse that may give this reason that he has this technique with his temples where he tries to remember things, and he couldn't even remember that night. He couldn't utter. Yeah, I mean, he was really drunk, but he seemed to be so restrained. It was really frustrating for him to not be able to communicate as a character, but it's so realistic. Like you said, that's such a flaw that fits with this maze of a story.
Yeah. I think I don't know, something that, I mean, by the second half, I really came to get a good grasp and appreciate the movie and the filmmaking a lot more. And not because the second half is necessarily better, I think because the whole thing is so well put together. His style kind of honestly reminds me a little bit of Rian Johnson's, a little bit, particularly this movie. This movie feels a lot to me like Brick in a lot of ways. Everything from some visual things to just the idea of this kind of murder mystery and going around like a community and interacting with a lot of children, like teenagers in this circumstance, much like in Brick, where it takes place in a high school. And everyone has like a very has a gimmick or a quirk about them, strong personality trait that manifests in some way and is very fun to watch, but also it's not just there to be like a fun on the surface thing. It ends up connecting into the plot somehow. And that's what I really liked about a lot of this movie is a lot of small things are introduced right from the very beginning. And everything that's introduced is important. Everything has a part to play, whether it be small items or someone's gimmick or their talents or their interests or someone's personality or a location where someone goes. It all kind of ties back into the plot in some way, which I found very appealing because we have, the acupuncture thing that's introduced at the very beginning, which comes into play at the end. We have the girl's nosebleeds that also come into play. It's very subtle and very small, but it's kind of like, oh, this is the reason they, are blaming this guy now. It's because of these nosebleeds from earlier. Just a lot of intricate parts that work really well without feeling too convoluted.
Yeah. I think too, like that lends itself to this movie being like a very like engaging mystery. I think because like as an audience, you get to learn pretty early on that those little things are probably going to come back. Where I think like as a movie audience today, like it's really easy to get jaded and like think that maybe they're trying to mislead you or like something like that. Like I don't feel like this movie does that. I don't feel like this movie intentionally misdirects you at any point. It really does just put you in the center of things, and you get, and it's probably because of the narrative structure too, but you're getting all the information that she gets, with the exception of like that reveal of like the stuff that's going on much earlier. But as far as the investigation goes, like if she finds something or learns something, that's when the audience is learning it too. And so because of that, it doesn't feel like there's this Sherlock Holmes-esque ending where she has to like break everything down like some intricate math problem or something. Like it really does. I think that because of that, it feels. I don't know. To me, that helped it feel more engaging, and it feels like a really effective mystery in that way.
100%. And I think Knives Out is a fan favorite from last year that it didn't cheat as much as Sherlock Holmes, where it's like, well, we're going to show you all this stuff you missed that really wasn't there. But it was to the point where you're so off from the plot and you're so shifting in your view. And I love that he did it, frankly. I just think that works better as a story. And I'm watching Devs right now. It's an FX on Hulu show I recommended, but it is one of my favorite things I've seen in a very long time. But we as the audience are so far ahead of the protagonist. And so, Tyler, that's not something I even thought about. Like the fact that we really are with her and we learn as quickly as she does. And we probably get more solid things because we get a visual flashback. But it is her perspective and it's her feelings for her son that we're supposed to be in those depths with her. And that's why she's the title character and the title of the film and everything. So I really like that. I don't think I had really noticed how much that perspective can bother me in other television and stuff. And you can say that with Parasite as well. You are very present with the story. You're not waiting on your characters, aside from a few anticipation scenes. Which, by the way, like when she's sneaking out with the golf club right after the thug and his girlfriend did it, I was like, oh, this is incredible that he flips that tension switch. And it's almost a gimmick in his filmmaking, but it really does put you right there with her anxiety because there's so much more than just getting caught. It's what getting caught means.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, is that a staple in all of his movies? I've only seen these two, but he always has someone trying who there's people having sex and then there's people in the same room unbeknownst to the lovemakers who is trying not to get caught. And it makes me wonder if there's like an event in his life where he had a really uncomfortable moment. But have you guys seen his other movies? Are there more scenes like that in his other movies?
I mean, I've seen Snowpiercer, Memories of Murder, and I don't recall moments like that. But I think that in both Parasite and Mother, those scenes. I think using that as a device is really interesting, just because of the power dynamic that exists. Like in Parasite, there's like a very obvious like class power dynamic and message being conveyed in that scene. In this one, I think there's also that dynamic, but it's so much more subtle and. In a lot of ways, the stakes are, I don't know if I want to say lower, but like the idea of like this being this small town, like if she is caught in that moment, like while these youngsters are getting it on, and is out, and that goes around the town, like, first of all, that's not going to help her credibility with like her son's case. She's going to be branded as a pervert. Like there's all these like interesting social things in those moments. But I had never thought of that as a device to use. So I hope that Bong Joon-ho continues to put that in every movie, including.
It is interesting that it is kind of a power dynamic thing that kind of puts it on its head, because usually the person hiding in the house and the people in the house not knowing they're there, usually the person hiding has the power in that moment.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
They're going to kill them.
In this case, just the simple act of them, like, being there, not being caught, but then also just like having the most uncomfortable event take place while you're hiding is just kind of like almost like a power move in itself that makes you have less in that moment as you're hiding. Like, it's like, well, fuck, I can't do anything right now. Like,
right.
And I have to watch this. Like, it's like involuntarily watching porn while trying not to get caught. It's weird. I hope I never find
a situation we all can relate to. Just the other day, I was involuntarily and trying to do other stuff, and it was so difficult.
Working from home is so hard.
Oh gosh. On a side note, have you guys seen any of the Zoom compilations of people just like taking their computers into their bathroom to take a shit in the middle of class and leaving their cameras on? Because, man, that is a rabbit hole you should go down for sure. It's very funny.
I've seen some clips, but no compilation.
Maybe I need to make that. Anyways, okay, back to Mother.
Maybe that's an app we can make. There's a new
Zoom poops.
Oh, the other thing I got from that scene is while they're doing it, the first two things they say are spaghetti and tiramisu. And I just want to say that's the sex life I aspire to. So if you're ever going to witness me, just get ready to hear some random foods.
To witness you?
Yeah, I know. What a...
You a warboy from Mad Max? What the fuck?
Shiny and chrome.
You cannot simply see Mitchell have sex. You must witness it.
I feel like seeing it is just such a... It could just be like bad footage, you know? I want you to, I'm saying witness. You gotta get the full experience, okay?
You're so giving, Mitchell. You're so giving.
It's all or nothing with me, okay?
Man, I can empathize with that scene a lot more right now. Oh, boy.
Power dynamic in this podcast has switched all of a sudden.
It's totally shifted.
Mitchell holds all the power right now.
Witness me. Honestly, the whole time you guys were talking, I was just thinking, what food should I shout out while they're witnessing? I don't know.
I think that's a decision best left for the moment. You know what I mean? You don't want...
Yeah.
Bat soup.
It's got to be spontaneous, Planned improv is less, it's just enjoy the moment,
True.
I feel very vulnerable right now.
So Mother. This movie. No, another thing I wanted to talk about. I think the two moments from this movie that have stuck with me the most are the opening shots and the closing shots of this movie. First of all, because they're so visually they are so different than probably anything else we see in the movie, I think. And they also are just, to me, it establishes what the movie is really about. And he goes out of his way to let you know this movie is called Mother. This character's name is Mother. And we start with an opening shot of her, and she is the one in the closing shot. And it's it really does drive home this idea that this is her story. As much time as we're spent thinking about Dojun and the girl's been murdered and all these pieces, it really is this story about her. And the journey that she goes on is not attractive at all. This definitely
painful.
Feels, this feels like a movie where it's there isn't a happy ending. And it's really hard to, it'd be hard to make the argument that she's in a better place at the end of this movie than she is at the beginning. And it's not that she was in a great place at the beginning of this movie. And so it is, that to me, it is a really, it feels like a very distinct story in a way. Whereas I feel like a thriller like this, there are tons and tons of examples of thrillers where it's someone, trying to solve these cases and to help out their family or their brother, whatever it is. And they might find out some rough things along the way. But typically in a lot of these American thrillers, you end with some sort of justice that is satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
And in this, you are not given that at all, in a way that feels aggressively so. And I think that's really interesting, and it's great. It does make this movie hard to watch for sure.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting way to do kind of the hero's journey of that third act of kind of the return, where they what they've experienced, they can't continue to live the life they once lived, right?
Yeah.
And so in this movie, the answer is, I can't go on and live the way I used to live, but the way to do that is by forgetting my journey, essentially. And that's what it takes to go back to the way things used to be, type of thing.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing that's not as, I mean, it's not like wholly original. It's been done before, but it's not done very often, and definitely not in this way. This was a very unique way to do it, and I really, really enjoy his style of how he takes that outline and follows it in his own unique way.
Yeah, because there is resolution. I mean, we kind of learned the things we wanted to learn, and we know where people end up. But that core relationship of the movie, like, now she knows he's a murderer, and he knows she tried to kill him, and there's just so much manipulation. And I still did find myself not rooting for them, but hoping that they could find a new environment, because I think, Tyler, you've said a couple times it's a small town, and I don't know if we have a great gauge for that as Americans, what this type of town in Korea is like, but just seeing that the way that the police interact and the way that the golf course feels so different from everything else, and the way that people just walk along this town, and how these people seem to know each other, but almost everyone has an antagonistic relationship. It just makes me, I mean, I guess poverty keeps you there, but it's something you'd want to run from. And so it is interesting to have not just a sad ending. It's not a football team losing. It is really like a breakdown of human beings who still have to exist. And that kid, who probably deserved to be in prison anyway for something, is now falsely imprisoned. Like, there's some brutal stuff. He's not scared to expose some of the violence, with the kids that they tortured for information and the murder. It's pretty affecting. And we also know that Bong Joon-ho, if he were going to kill someone, would use a large rock, because it's happened and I know we talk about Parasite a lot, but I think that's most people's touchstone for Bong Joon-ho, and I think more people should see it. And it is very interesting to see two completely different movies with all those parallels from their same creator. And the service that I did a free trial on to watch this also has The Host, which I know is an important movie of his, so I may check that one out as well. I'm curious about that. But yeah, the ending definitely is unique from what we see in most movies.
Yeah,
well, it's a movie that starts. I mean, his style, at least from the three, I've seen the beginning. Oh, actually, I saw the first half of Okja and the first half of Snowpiercer, but I never finished them. But three of those movies have a very whimsical kind of tone to them. Even in the tonal shifts, it's not a tonal shift that feels like it's broken. It doesn't feel like a drastic change that doesn't fit with the other half. Right. It still continues the same tone, but now there's just kind of some darker tones thrown in there and some darker moments. And I think he does that so well. It's so hard to do such a drastic tonal shift without it becoming something. This is a bad example because I actually like this one, but like in Mandy, there's a drastic tonal shift in that movie, but they feel so different. Whereas this feels kind of similar throughout. And we go some dark places. We see, it's particularly with a lot of young people. There's a lot of young people experiencing things that, even adults shouldn't experience, but it's a shame that like children have to go through any of that. And it's all on this woman's journey to try and clear the name of her son, who ends up being a murderer,
Yeah, for sure. That is really interesting. And I didn't even think about like comparing that tonal shift to Mandy, but it is similar, but just like in the way that Mandy's tonal shift feels like it was shot by a different crew. Like it's like just feels so absurdly different. But yeah, that I think that I think one of the things that this movie kind of gets the play off of too, and that Bong Joon-ho does in Parasite as well, is subverting a lot of expectations. Not so much in like turning those things on their heads, but like, we talked about how this is maybe a little different than something in the vein of like a Sherlock Holmes or an Agatha Christie mystery, where it has these different elements, and he's changing those just enough that it feels really fresh while still borrowing from the rich canon of that. And he does that in Parasite too with tons of, there's so much Hitchcockian bullshit in Parasite that I honestly think that's one of the reasons that it's resonated so well with the Western audience, is that those are the thrillers that everyone has been raised on and has been adopted into our canon so ferociously. And he uses enough of those that it feels really familiar. But then when he does step away from that formula that we're so used to, it feels like an even bigger departure than it actually is, I guess. But yeah, he's really fascinating. It's really good. So.
It is. He does a great job with consistency and tone, and he makes the look and feel work so well, which we take for granted. I feel like there's a lot of movies where we notice that those are off now, and that no matter what point you're trying to get across or what ending you're going to, a lot of times we take for granted that those little things are off, and they throw us out of it as a viewer, even if it's because this isn't a story we necessarily love to hear. But I think it is something that he does so well as a filmmaker to then help you understand why it exists, or what it's worth thinking about of positions and things like this. Like I never thought of it as gratuitous, but it is grimy. It is unattractive. Did you guys have any other thoughts on Mother?
I think it's definitely worth calling out the performance. Mother's performance in this movie, which is just really incredible. In all the Bong Joon-ho movies I've seen, there are similar performances, which tells me he knows how to work well with actors and to get those things out of them. But her performance in this is just so it is so good. It is so grounded in the moment. It feels completely like complex the entire time. She feels like such a real person. And I think for me, that's why that last scene really is, to me, probably like the hardest one to watch, honestly. Is like there's so much said in that scene with no dialogue, where she's on the bus with all those people and everything. And but yeah, she's just really fantastic.
Yeah, I love the lack of dialogue throughout this, and I think that that tells you a lot. Another movie I saw with way more unintentional dialogue recently was Portrait of a Lady on Fire. It's now out on Hulu, but it's really similar, where you are examining a human face a way you thought you would never do before. And I think that this causes you to, which there's a lot of quiet movies that depend on camera movement and characters doing some things. But when you have 1 to 2 characters who are really, their emotions have to carry a movie, and then and in this, for us, there's a language barrier, but to shut down those words completely, I think that does show her performance. And I didn't even think of her acting very much. I think because I was so invested, I was just along for the ride, which I think says a lot about it itself. And I really do love that opening scene where she's kind of dancing. She's kind of getting her groove on to some piano music. And it already helped me relate to the character, because that's why I go into fields. And, so it had me.
It's the best place to hear piano. Yeah. God damn you.
Justin, Tyler, did you guys have any other observations you want to point out before we take a quick break and do some recommendations?
I had 2 things that I was thinking of. The first, I still feel very amateur when it comes to watching a movie critically. Like most of my movie watching experience growing up has just been for pure entertainment. And watching this movie, there were a couple things that stood out to me that were really impressive. This is my first Bong Joon-ho movie. I haven't seen any of his others yet. I haven't watched Parasite
Okay.
yet. But the shot where the police officers are talking about the dead girl, and they all kind of line up um, right below the building where she is hanging over the ledge, and just kind of one by one they move into the scene as they're talking about the circumstances, who she was, what she's been doing, and the aligning, like just the way that that shot is framed, with her body hanging over the edge of this rooftop, and they're all three lined up um, in ascending height order as well, and just the way that your eye is drawn to her her dead body hanging. I mean, obviously it's a dead body, so you're looking there automatically, but it's just the enforcement of the subject in that scene is really it's really cool. And then there was one other scene, well, the closing scene actually, while mother, she's sitting in the back of the bus and the camera moves down the side of the bus, and because the aisle is full of dancing ladies, and as the camera moves over each of those seats, I was just thinking like, man, that's a really cool shot right there, as they pass that camera back, or however they moved it from the front of the bus to the back like that.
Yeah.
I thought that was really really impressive. And then the other, just kind of in general, this movie, I think, I I felt there are a few movies that I've watched where I feel like I'm uncomfortable because I feel like I'm watching something that I should not be watching because of how intimate it feels. And this movie, the entire time, just from the opening scene, the way that that starts off, we're put on edge immediately, and through the rest of the film, the color choice, everything about it, it made me so uncomfortable, but also because it was so personal as well. These are big human emotions that are like a big human story that's being told, but it's being told in a small town with unimportant people, people who are poor, who are never going to do anything significant in this world, and yet this story is something that is kind of beyond normal human life almost. And it felt so, I don't know, I felt like I shouldn't be watching this story unfold because it was so real and intimate to this small community and group of people that the story was based around. So yeah, I really enjoyed this quite a bit. I'm looking forward to checking out the other movies that have been on my list for a long time that I just haven't got to yet, but
Yeah.
need to, definitely.
Yeah.
I just want to say there have been really good movies coming out in that same vein out of Asia the last few years. I think of Shoplifters as another one that you may want to check out, and it doesn't necessarily need to focus on poor people, I guess, but when you get to the rich and the wealthy and the influential, or just the far-fetched, it just seems like America's smaller stories rarely have the honesty that we see out of Asia, and that's always been something the French have done well, and I'm sure it's had its periods in American cinema, but I love the way you put that, Justin, just that, if you feel like you're being a voyeur into a story with such intense emotion and not in a soap operatic way, I think that says a lot about what it is. So yeah, if that's those small humans making big emotions and feeling that way, I would suggest Shoplifters as well, which I think was 2017.
I actually do want to recommend a couple American quick. Basically anything Sean Baker has done, Tangerine, Florida Project, Star, those all feel like that. And then also a movie that I did not think I was going to like when I first saw it, but it's probably become one of my favorite movies from the last little while, is American, which...
Sorry, you cut out a little bit there. American what?
American Honey.
Oh, yeah.
Shia LaBeouf is in it. It's about kids who sell magazine subscriptions, basically homeless kids who are manipulated and put into vans to drive across the country and sell magazine subscriptions. It's really, really good. But yeah, I think that that is there's a lot of great stuff along those lines is happening right now in film for sure.
Cool. Well, Mother was a lot of fun. If you guys, Justin, if you watch Parasite, and if you guys check out other stuff, I'd love to hear what we think of more of Bong Joon-ho's stuff.
Yeah,
As
definitely.
I'm trying to get more into filmographies of directors. That it's good. It just takes a commitment, because this is one, when you read the tagline, or you may even, I didn't watch the trailer or anything because I wanted to go in kind of blind, but I just didn't understand the appeal. And I think for the better of it, sometimes you watch things by creators and you pull things from them that are really interesting. So I'm glad we watched Mother. And if you're thinking about watching The Other Mother, starring Jennifer Lawrence, good effing luck. Pretty rough. Mother exclamation point. But let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll shoot you guys a nice recommendation, since we all have lots of time to consume things right now. Welcome back to the Rewatchers on the pod, in the pod. I don't even know anymore. We're going to do some recommendations in a second, but first, if you do want to get in contact with us, if you have some ideas for what we should be doing while we're quarantined, or anything that we've said on the show, Tyler, how can people reach us?
You can email us at rewatchersonthepod@gmail.com, or reach out to us on Twitter or Instagram at rewatcherspod. And that's it. Yeah.
Cool. And then next week, pretty stoked. One of my favorite movies, which I only saw with Tyler a couple years ago for the first time. Tyler, what are we going to be checking out for your selection?
We're going to watch Michel Gondry's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, starring Jim Carrey. That's really wonderful, and I can't wait for everyone to watch it. And next week's we're going to talk about some stuff. It'll be fun.
Speaking of Jim Carrey, have you seen Kidding?
I have. I actually just finished the first season of Kidding last week, and I really, really love it. It's not perfect, but it's really, really great.
That's definitely on my very long to-do list, which I'm having. That might be a better one, because I want to watch things like The Sopranos and Better Call Saul, but I'm having a really hard time starting a new hour-long drama that I know has many seasons. So maybe Kidding will be a good one. But, let's talk about what we did watch this week. Tyler Harris, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I'll kick us off. So I had a couple things to recommend. The first thing is actually something that Mitchell recommended to me a couple weeks ago. I don't think it was on the podcast, but it might have been. Who knows? But a new show on AMC called Dispatches from Elsewhere, starring Jason Segel and produced by Jason Segel, I believe. And he also directed the pilot and all that. Anyways, Dispatches from Elsewhere is a show that is based on a documentary that was about an ARG that people played in San Francisco, an augmented reality game, alternate reality game. There's like a million different explanations for that. But anyways, it was basically this thing where they just started hanging up these weird flyers around San Francisco for like human force field testing or dolphin communication system testing or whatever. And they just had these little, like, the phone numbers on the bottom. And when people called, they would get this basically like operator who would let them know they were talking to the June Institute and wanted to know if they wanted to come in for like an open house kind of like thing about their institute. And people would go, and it was this very new agey, like Scientology feeling kind of thing, with this guy who would like explain that they were trying to make the world a better place. But then on the cards they were supposed to fill out, people will have written stuff like, it's a lie, you need to run now, you need to get out, and like with these instructions on how to get out of the building without any security seeing them or having to go past the front desk. And that would then lead them on this scavenger hunt around the city to like these different pieces of street art and stuff, and then eventually a storefront that had been just completely filled with random items and lights. And it went on for months and months and months of like, once you were in, you were kind of doing all these events all over. There were people who would get phone calls to go take phone calls at a payphone like 2 blocks from their house and then be told to dance to jam the frequencies of evildoers. Anyways, it's really great. The documentary is called The Institute. It's very good. But they are also making the show, and it's about 5 episodes in now. And after the first couple, I was kind of on the fence. I wasn't really sure if I loved it yet. But I am all caught up now, and it is my most anticipated show every week, I think, at this point. It's really fun. It's basically about human connection and bringing together just really random people and finding the good in each other, helping each other. And it's a really, I think also just with the way things have been over the last few weeks, it was a very like therapeutic and uplifting watch. But yeah, it's great. Jason Segel's in it. Sally Fields is in it. My new favorite actress, Eve Lindley, is in it, who is fantastic. And Andre 3000 is in it also as one of the main characters, and he is probably my favorite character in the show so far. So, yeah, it's really great. The other thing that I wanted to recommend is this. Well, I'm about to eat words that I said, but I got Animal this weekend, and I've been playing a fuck ton of Animal Crossing. And I this definitely isn't a game that I would be playing unless like my brother and sister-in-law and my sister have it, and a couple of their friends have it, and now I'm finding out literally everyone I know in everyday life also has it and is now friends with me on my Nintendo Switch. But it's if you are stuck in your house and need some positive experiences with others in your friend groups that have access to this game, it's just about the best way you can do it. I think it's very simple. One of my friends described it as barely a video game, and he is not wrong. And I think that's probably the best thing about Animal Crossing is that it's barely a video game. But yeah, it's really great. Just go gather some fruit and catch some bugs while you're stuck inside.
Oh, that sounds like such a wonderful time. Justin, what do you want to recommend this week?
So there's this game called Doom Eternal.
I've done one.
Actually, just one small tidbit about that we haven't discussed. I did give the multiplayer a try this week, which I think we pretty much talked exclusively about the campaign last
Right.
week. But multiplayer is actually pretty fun. You can queue up to either play as a Doomslayer or you can queue up to play as a demon, and then you get thrown into a match with 2 other online players, and depending on whether or not you're playing as a Doomslayer or as another demon, it's 1 Doomslayer against 2 demons, and then those demons can command a horde of other demons and summon new demons, and it's a good time. If you've ever wondered what it looks like as a demon to see the Doomslayer coming to you to kill you, this gives you a pretty good idea of that. Yeah, I was
So you're telling me
surprised.
this is breeding empathy for...
You just cut out completely, and I have no idea what you said.
I said
Breeding empathy for
the denizens of hell.
Oh yeah, a little bit.
Just
Yeah,
giving you the good.
Yeah. The 2v1 play style I was a little skeptical of because I feel like a lot of the kind of asymmetrical multiplayer games that have come out over the last 2 years haven't really done that great, and I don't think that Doom's multiplayer is going to do very good either. But the couple hours that I played it, I had a lot of fun, and when I managed to get into a queue as the Doomslayer, it was like the best moments from the campaign where everything is just absolutely insane and crazy and you're running around. It was just all condensed down into a multiplayer match, and it was a really good time. So I would recommend checking that out.
Good.
Just one quick anti-recommendation that I have. I tried Mark Maron's new stand-up on Netflix and bounced off in about 15 minutes. It did not it was not my thing. It felt like every joke he was saying I've heard about a million times already, so there was nothing really new to it. So I don't know, if you're a Mark Maron fan, then maybe you're just gonna like whatever he puts out. But me, as somebody who I've only been exposed to him through Glow, seeing his stand up, and I know that he's got a podcast that's pretty popular as well, but his stand up just didn't do it for me. So that's my anti recommendation for the week.
Fair enough.
Nice. I'll go real quick. I think mine are pretty simple. The first one is called Formula One: Drive to Survive, and this is they're in their second season on Netflix, and it's I really like it because it's a docuseries about sports, but they're only like 30 to 38 minutes long, which I feel like it's just would always be an hour long. And so I breeze through them. I'm a huge sports person and I've never cared about racing really. And this is like the big ritzy European top racing thing in the world. And it's part like reality show. And they do kind of let you know what's going on with the actual racing season, but you're just with these rich, arrogant, high-strung psychos who are trying to win this thing. And it's like European soccer where the money is everything. And to me, it's a fascinating insight. So it's like the right blend of reality TV and sports documentary for me. So really breezy watch. I've definitely enjoyed kind of getting to know a sport in a new way as someone who's pretty familiar with that stuff. And then the other thing, I mean, I know it's everywhere, but you got to watch Tiger King. I promise you it's not a waste of 7 hours. Like, put it on the background while you're doing things. You might miss some of the craziest lines, but like, I don't know if there's anything that's not blatantly in every meme in the world that I can say, but I love watching these psychotic, manipulative, white trash people, mostly white trash, do these things. And I feel bad for the animals. If you're a huge animal lover, there are some tough moments, but I think there is a lot of animal love. But I think bigger than that, there's a lot of psycho humans who are having negative effects on these animals. But yeah, it's the silly Netflix thing of the week, and I'm usually willing to jump into that. I did watch Love is Blind, so whatever. But I really think this is an interesting thing that I was surprised it was 7 episodes, but when I actually listened to a podcast about it, there's a lot on the cutting room floor. It's the whole big cat world is absolute insanity. And so if you're thinking this is a trend, you're like, I don't really need the Tiger King thing, you're going to miss out on oodles of entertainment. And so I recommend it. I'm here for it. Next week, I'm going to find an anti-recommendation because it's my favorite thing Justin does every week. But I just got 2 fun ones for you this week.
Do I do that frequently? I
feel like
think
you only started using the phrase a couple weeks ago. But I think we've all said, "Oh, here's something I tried. Yeah, don't waste your time."
Yeah. I will say about Tiger King, I would be shocked if Jared doesn't already have a script written for the movie.
There is a miniseries or 2 in the works. And they're talking, there's a couple of actors who are already talking about it, and I'm like, yeah, sign me up, please. Have you watched it, Tyler?
Yeah, I watched the entire thing in because, man, what a week it's been. But yeah, it's very good. I will say, like, I started out doing other things while I was watching it and then quickly stopped. I could not look away. There's just a shocking amount of just ridiculous bullshit in that documentary. It blows my mind.
Let me just give you a tease. Someone gets their arm ripped off, and within 7 days, by a tiger, and with 7 days is back working at that place. Period. That's all you need to know. I watched the first episode with my roommate and with my ex-wife, and both of them were doing other things during the show, and then just had to stop and start watching. Anyway, all right, so that's Tiger King. Tyler McKinley, why don't you wrap us up with what you want to recommend for us?
All right, I'm gonna be brief because we talked about enough, but holy shit, Doom. I just barely, like, right before we started recording, I was late because I am on the final boss of my second playthrough, and I'm gonna start.
What difficulty are you on this time?
So I upped it to I can't remember the fucking names of them. The one you did,
okay,
first,
right.
Which is what I wish I would have done the first time, to be honest.
Yeah,
because by the end
of
my first playthrough, I had like 54 extra lives by the end. Like,
holy shit! Wow.
Because like I was like trying to 100%, so I went back to the other levels, and the extra lives respawn. So I'm just like gathering a ton. Anyway, so I am next week I'm gonna start doing the Nightmare playthrough, but there's no chance in hell I'm doing the Ultra Nightmare because you have to like spend all day doing that. Like there's no way you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can't do it. But I do want to give a shout out to the music in that game because I think that the music's a great fit for the first 2016 game, but the music in this one is production wise, there's some really awesome creative things, and just want to give a shout out to that. And transitioning with music to another thing, that this band doesn't need any more smoke blown up its ass, but there's such a little amount of video footage of their live performances that they actually released like an official one by Vic Firth, the drumstick company, of Danny Carey of Tool playing one of their songs on their most recent tour from the drum cam. And holy shit, if like it's not for everyone. Like I tried to show my wife and she like thought it was cool, but like she couldn't, it didn't hold her interest. But as someone who like drums, and I'm a shitty drummer, but I understand enough of it to like just be blown away by this performance. It's a long song, but I mean, you're in quarantine. What the fuck else are you gonna do? Watch the video. If you have to, even fast forward to like the halfway mark, because the second half of that song is bonkers. It's Pneuma by Tool, the Danny Carey thing, and he's just a phenomenal drummer who's drumming in just bonkers time signatures, but like doing like weird twists on them to make them like they're not in a different, like they're in a, like I think it's like 7-Eleven or something, but then he makes it sound like it's in some other fucking thing because he skips a thing. It's great. Anyway, also Danny Carey is fascinating because I think he's one of those astral projection people.
One of those.
Which I discovered that subreddit recently, and holy shit.
Yeah.
And but anyway, he like created like this symbol, which I don't know it. All I know is he created a symbol to trap a demon, and I don't know if the demon resides in his drums because it's on top of his drum heads, or if it's just a demon he has at his house trapped. I don't know, but it's fascinating anyway. So yeah, watch that video on YouTube. And then because of playing Doom and its just perfect tone of bonkers, like testosterone self-awareness, I finally watched a movie I've been wanting to watch in a long time. And it's a genre I've been wanting to get into for a long time just because it kind of is that same, at least I'm hoping is very much that same thing from Doom Eternal, which is the sword and sorcery genre. And I finally watched Conan the Barbarian with Arnold Schwarzenegger for the very first time the other night. And to be honest, not as good as I was hoping for. But
welcome to the sword and sorcery genre.
But to be honest, I had a hell of a time watching it. There's so many times in that movie where I just had to stop and just be like, holy shit, this is happening. James Earl Jones is in it, and he's got the same haircut that girl from D. Antwoord has, which is great to see. Man, that movie is just so stupid and great. And there's a part where James Earl Jones, get this, strokes his snake and it goes stiff. And it's an actual snake. It's like an actual little snake and it goes like stiff, and he shoots it out of a bow like an arrow and it sticks into someone. And it's just full of shit like that. You see James Earl Jones transform into a snake with 80s technology. And that's wonderful. Arnold Schwarzenegger, honestly, I can't stand the guy. I can't stand him at all. Like his laugh, his acting, like I know it's supposed to be like goofy in a lot of things, but it's not enjoyable. It's fun to laugh at, I guess, but
so now you've slandered Back to the Future and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Just be kinder to the 80s, my man.
I mean, but I don't know. It's actually a recommendation for me. It's fun to see like what the nerds in the 80s thought like hot sex looked like, because one of the most uncomfortable sex scenes. You want to talk about like Bong Joon-ho's uncomfortable sex scenes? This one really ousts it. And yeah, it's a wild ride. You'll laugh a lot. Yeah, and so immediately after, it was like 2 a.m, I started the remake with Jason Momoa, and ooh, I've only seen the beginning, but I mean, it starts with a C-section by Ron Perlman in the middle of a battle with a sword. So I mean, at least you'll be like, it has those what the fuck moments, going for it. But yeah, I'm gonna start getting more into that genre. I will report back each week with the horrors I've seen. And yeah, it's really, I recommend all those things very strongly.
Beautiful. Well,
Oh wait, sorry. I
Do it.
forgot. I haven't talked about wrestling this week yet, but I do have a huge wrestling recommendation.
do we
Vice,
need a name for the segment, like your corner, I don't know.
yeah, Tyler's Corner. I don't know. But so Vice has a documentary series they started a year ago called Dark Side of the Ring, and they released about 6 episodes. They're really great. They just started their second season, which is going to be 10 episodes. But the first episode is a 2-part, like 2-hour documentary about Chris Benoit, which, if you know anything about Chris Benoit, he basically, the story, he killed his wife and son and himself, and it's a huge story. It almost destroyed the wrestling world, and honestly, it's not talked about very often at all. Like, WWE has literally scrubbed his name from everything on their website, on everything, and so this is kind of telling that story, and it's really hard to watch, but it's really fascinating. If you're a fan of like true crime, even, you've probably heard about Chris Benoit, and it's a really interesting look into the world of professional wrestling, and it's all on YouTube for free, so check it out. That's all.
No, it's worth it every time. We're gonna come up with a wrestling theme name for that segment for you every week. It deserves to exist. But again, hey, everyone, thanks for joining us. I really do hope everyone's enjoying podcasts in this time when it's hard to find things to do or feel good about sometimes. So continue staying far away from other humans. Like, we're pretty good at it, but this makes it even it's more stressful now. But remember, next week we're gonna watch one of the all-time greats, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. So come on back for that. My name is Mitchell Marshall, and I've been here with
Tyler Harris,
Tyler McKinley,
Justin Hammer.
Ooh, that's the best we've had so far. Thanks for tuning in, folks.